Hello everyone, this is my first video on this channel about chronic fatigue syndrome, and I'm just trying to list all the possible things that might cause chronic fatigue syndrome because it's just a label. It's really just a dumping ground, really, chronic fatigue syndrome or whatever. And of course, governments, their view might be that these people have all got mental health problems and they should all be, if they're on disability or whatever, they should all be back at work or whatever. But I would say to the governments, you should actually look at it the other way. There's something wrong with them, and if you do lots of tests, you'll find out what's wrong with them. Because I think that's what the problem is. We're a society of, if you're doing self-help, you're taking vitamins, minerals, you don't know. You don't know if you're lacking them at all or whatever. Or if you're with the government health system, you're very lucky to get tests. You might get tests, but you're very lucky, but you're not going to get a test like an MRI scan, full body scan, anything like that, if you've just got chronic fatigue or something like that. And I just heard of somebody recently who found out it was a female. She found out she had pectus excavatum, which is funnel chest. It's sunken chest, and it's actually where the sternum and maybe some of the ribs are going inwards, and they might be affecting the heart, and actually they might feel out of breath and stuff. So it's pretty serious. And I can imagine a lot of people with that will end up, say, on benefits or whatever. So that I've actually got a problem. And someone in the comments was actually saying that one in three males might be prone to this to some degree. And I'm talking about grey area people and worse, but grey area, because if you're really severe or something, then probably at some point the health system spotted it. Not always though, in my opinion. I mean, now they've got DNA tests, probably for all babies, which is good. I don't know if it's whole genome, but I really hope so. I hope it's not just a scan. I think it's just a scan of certain tests, but it should really be the whole genome. Everyone should do their whole genome DNA test, and they should try and find out what weaknesses you've got, basically. Because if you don't know already, then it could be it's going to hit you somewhere down the line, or you're a grey area person where it affects you a bit, but not enough for you to get a diagnosis. So this is what my attitude is for all these problems. Your attitude should be tests, tests, and tests. And I don't just mean health system tests, because a lot of their tests aren't good enough. I mean the sort of tests you would get if you were a racehorse. They probably get MRI scans, they probably get all these things, vitamin mineral tests, whereas humans were really just to get on with it. So body scans, MRIs, vitamin and mineral tests. In Britain there used to be an excellent lab called Biolab in London, but it's been closed down recently. I think they had to close down because the government was being too hard on them, or maybe just before COVID or something, I don't know, or during that. I don't know what the thing was, but it was a great place because you could do any vitamin and mineral test, etc. Um, so going on about this, because I just want to point out, a lot of chronic fatigue people might be saying, oh, he's trying to imply it's mental or something. No, I'm saying it's not mental. But what I'm saying is chronic fatigue syndrome in itself is not a disorder. It's just a dumping ground, basically, saying we don't know what's up here. The same as sort of irritable bowel syndrome. It's just a dumping ground. They feel if they've got a weak tummy or something. You know, you don't really know what's up with them. I'm saying it's not discovered faults and weaknesses, and most of them will be grey area because if they were really severe, you would probably notice. Not always, though. Definitely not always. So what I'm saying to governments, if you solve them, you'll save money. I mean, because governments love these sort of businessmen, sort of entrepreneur, they would call them businessmen. But personally, I think most of the time these businessmen, if they fail, they're still going to be rich anyways. Either they've got the money already or they know how to get backing. So it's not really them that carries the can or whatever. Like a lot of celebs go bankrupt if they're having a hard time, and then they end up in OnlyFans or something like that. But anyway, yeah, solve them and save money. That's my thing to them. So this is the sort of disorders I'm talking about. Hemochromatosis. I heard about this in a book from the library. It was like 100 things that might cause chronic fatigue syndrome. So this is where I got the sort of idea for this channel. And hemochromatosis is one of them. It turns out I've got a one gene for this, but I seem to be alright because of that my doctor gave me a test and it was alright. I don't know if it means I'm really alright, but on that test anyway, because I don't know how sensitive it is. But yeah, apparently a lot of Celtic people sort of carry this. And it's a bit of a weakness. I don't know how many, 20% or something. I'm just making it up, a number up. But most will be okay. But you really want to rule it out because it's a pretty harsh thing. It ends up doing in your liver and stuff as well, so it's not a very good thing to have. Small intestine bile growth, I think this will be an epidemic. I think I've got this myself. Anyone with a bloated gut, probably there's a chance you get small intestine bile overgrowth. And basically gut over fermentation, really. Um, People who've got a severe one of this are the ones that have got short bowel syndrome. Because their bowel's so short, The bacteria's come right up to their absorptive area, right at the top of the small intestine. Can't remember. The ileum, is that or something? And they're constantly getting D-lactic acidosis because the bacteria is producing that from the foods they're eating. It's and that's making them very ill, and they could be killed from that. So they're going to emergency room a lot, or thinking because they're having like D-lactic acidosis things. And any farmer could tell you about that as well. Any farmer that owns sheep or cows, because they're prone to it as well, because they rely on fermentation totally to for their diet. If they didn't have gut microbiota, they would just all die, cows and sheep, because they've not got any digestive enzymes of their own, as far as I understand. So I think this is an epidemic as well. It's not really a test that's done often, and probably it's not sensitive enough either, in my opinion. And I think also you'll be able to have large intestine bile overgrowth, which at the moment the health systems don't think people have. So I would advise people who think they've got this to read about Professor Norm Robillard, his work to do with this. Um, yeah, he's big on this. I think you should really look at that. And then there's Gilbert syndrome. I used to think it was called Gilbert syndrome. I think it's called Gilbert syndrome. Possibly 10% of Brits have got this to some degree. And again, it's a grey area because if you've got it really bad, you'll have a yellowing of the eye quite often. And it looks like hepatitis, I think, from what I understand. Um, yeah, people have got this, but I think there's going to be a lot of grey area people who've got this as well, a bit of a weakness. And this is one of the phase 1 and 2 enzymes, which are the detox enzymes. And I think a lot of us will have faults or weaknesses in this area, and that's what will be the cause of the chronic fatigue syndrome. So Gilbert syndrome, yes, yellowing of the eye. So a lot of people know they've got it because of that. If it wasn't for the yellowing of the eye, we wouldn't know about this condition. Because what happens is you probably get a test for hepatitis or whatever, that'll be normal. But then you'll get a test for bilirubin or whatever, and you'll be high in that. So they'll say, oh, it's Gilbert syndrome. And at the moment, the health systems think people who have these, it's harmless. But I've checked their forums and that, and the people are talking about they're absolutely knackered. They sleep in their car during their work break and stuff like this. So really, they're not. I don't think people get away with this at all, really. And these phase 1 and 2 enzymes, the pharma industry calls them the pharma enzyme because they realise that a lot of their drugs reactions will be bad because people have got a weakness in these enzymes somewhere. Phase 1s are mainly oxidation or redox, and phase 2 are conjugation enzymes. Most of them are in your liver, but they're also in your small intestine, even in your brain and stuff. They're concentrated mainly in your liver, but this is why it says in medicines, don't take grapefruit juice, because grapefruit juice inhibits one of these enzymes. I think it actually kills the enzyme off, but if you stop, the enzyme regrows after about 3 days. CYP3A4, the main phase 1 enzyme. That's why they've put in the medicine bottles, so that's how serious it is. Um, yeah, that sort of thing. They should really be looking for this, but they don't really, because it's all grey area stuff mostly. And then, as I said, I just heard about funnel chest, pectus excavatum, and somebody in the comments was saying 1 in 3 males are got this to some degree. I don't know if that's correct or not. Maybe they're talking about in Britain. I don't know, but I don't think most people will get away with this free either. The lady in the thing, she's a camper who goes long distance walking and stuff, and she found that she couldn't do it anymore, even though she's only about 40. And she went to the doctor, and they done an MRI scan. They said it's fine. No, actually, they found out she had a cyst on her spine, one of her spinal things. So I don't know if that causes a problem as well, but this is the kind of thing you discover when you do an MRI. I mean, another thing when you do MRI brain scans is I find that people have got benign meningiomas or things like that in their brain, basically lumps. I mean, I think any lump is regarded as cancerous because it's an abnormal thing, but most of them are harmless. I don't know if I'm correct in saying that, but the thing about it, if you've got a benign one in your brain, if it just keeps growing, it's going to start nudging against your brain, and then you can have problems, even though it's not cancerous. Even if it's benign and growing, it can be a problem. Or there's other people just have them and they don't grow at all. Maybe they've calcified, this sort of thing. So this is the sort of problems that are only shown up in the MRI's body scans. I think everyone should have a body scan, say when they're 5 or something. I don't know. Maybe before that. Governments are starting to do this with schemes now, like in Scotland, they do a colonoscopy blood stool test. They do a stool test. I think they're starting to do another one, which I can't remember now. Or they should do anyway. But everyone should get a full scan, not just the MRIs. Blood check, heart scan, all this thing. Say every 5 years or something. I don't know. And if the health system won't pay for it, then you should do it yourself, or they should let you do it. Get access to the tests. Because tests are everything in my opinion. And there's not enough tests on the health system, like for a racehorse. I mean, the thing we would just ignore that, resource owners would just not bother with a health system test because it's not enough, and they're quite right. So this is the sort of thing I'm looking at, grey area stuff, chronic fatigue syndrome's just it's not even a disorder, it's just you're thrown in a dump, basically. And in Britain, about 3 years ago, when Sajid Javid became health minister, he said he was going to start looking at, well, he called it myalgic encephalopathy or whatever they call it. And I think to me, it's quite annoying to use this term because I don't think that people do have ME, but they're wanting to prove that it's not mental. So that they went for that because it sounds thingy, ME. I mean, ME is an actual thing, and 99.9% of people who feel the chronic fatigue syndrome don't have it, you know. So I understand them wanting to use ME because they don't want to use chronic fatigue syndrome because that sounds as if it could be mental. But just think of this as a dumping ground. I've got chronic fatigue syndrome. I don't know what's up with me. And so I'm going to start looking at each one of these things, and one by one, because and I'm talking about mostly grey area people, not always, because a lot of it will be things like people have got a genetic weakness from birth. Um, then other people, they might just express itself later in life or whatever, So, because I always wonder about things like, say, when aging rock bands are going on tour, and suddenly it turns out one of them needs heart surgery. I mean, why didn't it get picked up? Did he not do private tests, or did it not show in the private test for the tour before or whatever, this sort of thing. I don't know how even the rich aren't picking this up. Certainly if I was rich, I'd be doing loads of these tests. Because I've done some biolab tests and I found out I was deficient in biotin, which is interesting because apparently our gut flora produce a lot of that, or a good gut flora. And I think I had a bit of SIBO, a bit of candida, leaky gut, I had that. That's another thing that I think's an epidemic. Um, that's basically when your small intestine's meant to be a very fine sieve, really, in practice, but it's got gap holes in it, and you're letting in big proteins that aren't meant to go straight into the bloodstream. Because the way it's meant to happen is it's meant to get absorbed in your small intestine, then go to the liver for processing before it goes into the bloodstream. But I think in this way, if you've got big holes, it just goes straight in the bloodstream. It doesn't even go through the liver, I think, and just or it goes to the liver, and the liver doesn't know what to do, But a lot of it ends up in your circulating system, because your circulating system is you really, because your gut is actually just a big pipe. I mean, if you swallowed a marble, it should, in theory, come out the other end. It's not going into your bloodstream or anything like that. It's because your intestine is actually an external thing, even though it's part of you. Um, yeah, so this is just the sort of things I wanted to point out about this. I want to look at all the different things because and government should be looking at this, and centre right and right wing parties, because they're the ones that are the harshest, view those on disability benefits the harshest. And I'm saying to them, well, actually look at them like you would a business, because if they look at an entrepreneurial business, they're talking about 100 to 1 shots so that one becomes successful. And I don't know even why I spoke about that, but they're always talking about risking or whatever. But they're not looking at this the right way. They should look at it. They're always talking about investment. They want lots of money to invest. Well, this is an investment in the people on disability or whatever. The ones that you think they're at it or whatever, the chronic fatigue people or whatever. Yeah, I just want to look at all these sort of things. Okay, so that'll do just now. Let's wind down and rest a bit. Rest and take it all in. We feel calm, we feel relaxed. I also do another thing where I think the tortoise and the hare, we should all try and be like the tortoise, So come down to zero point 0.2 times speed rather than you're probably going at 1.5 times speed if you're an anxious type. If you're a hare type, you want to be like the tortoise, so you can practice in your house being really slow, go slow motion, If you're already slow motion, forget that because it's not going to do you much good if you're already slow motion. It might, you don't know. Okay, relax, come on, relax, relax. Okay, this is the first video for this channel. Goodbye.